Today on the bus, I noticed the woman sitting in front of me had a strange white stain on the back of her sweater. After hesitating for a moment, I tapped her on the shoulder and said politely, "Excuse me, miss. I don't mean to be rude, but I think there's some seam on your sweater." She turned around, looked a bit surprised, then laughed awkwardly and said, "Oh, that's probably just yogurt." I paused for a second, smiled, and said, "Maybe, but I'm pretty sure I don't yogurt." A Rasta man was sitting quietly on a crowded bus in Kingston, patting down his pockets and looking a little worried. He checked his bag, his jacket, even under his hat, but no sign of his bus fare. Suddenly he stood up, looked around at the other passengers with wide eyes, and declared in a deep voice, "Whoever took my bus fare better give it back now, or else what happened in '76 will happen again." The bus went dead silent. People started whispering. Some gasped. A woman clutched her child. One man even jumped off at the next stop. Within seconds, people were searching under seats, checking their pockets. Full panic mode. Finally, someone found a crumpled note on the floor near the Rasta and quickly handed it to him, trembling. The Rasta took it calmly, nodded, and sat back down. A few minutes later, a young man who had been watching everything leaned forward and tapped him on the shoulder. "Excuse me, Rasta, but what exactly happened in 1976? The Rasta slowly turned to him and said, "Me bus fare got stolen, and I had to walk home. Many years ago, during my married days, I accidentally overturned my golf cart. Elizabeth, a very attractive and keen golfer who lived in a villa on the golf course, heard the noise and called out, 'Are you okay? What's your name?' 'It's John, and I'm okay, thanks,' I replied as I pulled myself out of the twisted cart. 'John,' she said, firm, loose breasts undulating beneath her white silky robe, 'forget your troubles. Come to my villa, rest a while, and I'll help you get the cart up later.' 'That's mighty nice of you,' I answered. 'But I don't think my wife would like it.' 'Oh, come on now,' Elizabeth insisted. She was so very pretty, very, very sexy, and very persuasive. I was weak. 'Well, okay,' I finally agreed, but thought to myself, my wife won't like it. After a couple of restorative scotch and waters, I thanked Elizabeth. 'I feel a lot better now, but I know my wife is going to be really upset, so I'd best go now.' 'Don't be silly,' Elizabeth said, with a smile, letting her robe fall open slightly. 'She won't know anything. By the way, where is she? Still under the cart, I guess.' A woman is on a crowded bus trying to breastfeed her baby, but the baby's not cooperating. Frustrated, she says loudly, 'Come on, baby, eat up now, or I'm going to give it to that nice man over there.' She points directly at a random guy sitting across from her. 10 minutes later, still no luck. She tries again, louder this time. 'Sweetie, you have to eat, or Mommy's going to give it to that man over there.' Another 5 minutes go by, the baby's still refusing. 'Okay, last warning. If you don't start feeding, I'm giving this milk to that gentleman right there.' At this point, the guy suddenly throws his hands up and shouts, 'For the love of God, lady, make up your mind. My stop was 3 stops ago.' Wife, how about we try something different in bed tonight? Maybe a new position. Husband, instantly excited. 'Ooh, now we're talking?' Wife, great. You stand at the sink and do the dishes. I'll lie on the couch and moan about how tired I am.' 3 men stand in front of the pearly gates. St. Peter greets them and welcomes them to the entrance of heaven. Before he allows them entry, he tells them, 'You must all pass a test of purity. Each one of you will attach this bell with a string to your Then you must walk into a room filled with naked women. and if I hear a ding within 5 minutes, it shows me you are not pure enough to enter heaven and will be sent to hell." The first man enters the room filled with naked women. The moment he enters the room, he starts sweating with nervousness, and not even 30 seconds pass by. Ding, 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 street. Peter tells the poor soul, "I am sorry, but you have failed the test of purity. Go into the nearby shower room and cleanse yourself." The second man enters the room filled with naked women. The man begins to sweat and tries his best to resist his urges, but sure enough, after 2 minutes, ding, 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 street. Peter tells the man, "I'm sorry, but you have failed this test of purity. Please go into the shower room nearby with the previous man and cleanse yourself." It is now the third man's turn to take the test. Completely naked, and he enters the room not knowing what to expect. St. Peter listens intently for the bell to ding, but after 5 minutes of staying in the room, no ding is heard. The man walks out of the room, clearly exhausted by the test. St. Peter joyfully tells the man, "You passed the test of purity. Heaven embraces you with open arms. Before I let you in, please join the other two in the shower room nearby." Ding, ding, ding. 2 women on a crowded bus were locked in a bitter argument over the last available seat. They were yelling, shoving, and refusing to back down. The conductor tried to step in. "Ladies, please!" "Let's be reasonable." But neither would budge. Voices got louder. Passengers started watching. It was turning into a full-blown scene. Finally, the fed-up bus driver shouted from the front, "Just let the ugly one have it!" And neither of them sat down for the rest of the ride. There's 3 nuns who want to quit being nuns, so they approach the head nun and ask, "Head nun, what can I do to stop being a nun?" The head nun replies, "You each must commit 1 sin tonight, then come back tomorrow and drink from a cup of holy water. Only then will you not be a nun anymore." So the 3 nuns nod their heads in agreement and leave to go sin. When they come back the next day, the head nun asks the first nun, "What sin did you commit?" The first nun shakes her head sadly and says, "I robbed the house of my close friend." The head nun replies, "That is certainly a terrible sin. You may now drink from the cup of holy water." And so the first nun does so, drinking a couple mouthfuls to repent. Then, the head nun asks the second nun, "What sin did you commit?" The second nun buries her head in her hands and says, "I killed a man with his father's gun." The head nun replies, "Oh my, that's an even worse sin. You may now drink from the cup of holy water." And so the second nun does so, taking a few large sips to cleanse herself of sin. Finally, the head nun asks the third nun, "What sin did you commit?" The third nun, unlike the other 2 nuns, is actually laughing. "I committed a sin way worse than the others did." "So," says the head nun, "what did you do?" The third nun looks right at the other 2 nuns and says, "I peed in the holy water." George raises his beer mug in the air and says, "Here's to spending the rest of my life having love with my wife." The bar is filled with whistles and claps, and the bartender even gives him a ribbon that says, "Best Toast of the Month." When George gets home, he shows his wife, Linda, the ribbon. "And what exactly was your award-winning toast?" she asks. George thinks for a while and says, "Here's to spending the rest of my life going to church with my wife." The next day, when George is at work, Linda is walking down the street when she runs into Ted, one of George's drinking buddies. "Your husband sure gave an awesome toast last night," says Ted. "I know," replies Linda, "and he told me about it. It kind of surprised me because almost every time he goes down there, he falls asleep. A few weeks ago, I had to pull him by the ear to get him to come." At 92, Mr. Whitmore strolled into the doctor's office with a twinkle in his eye and a bow tie that hadn't seen a wrinkle in decades. "Doc," he beamed, I just married a 25-year-old beauty. And guess what? We got a baby on the way." The doctor smiled, nodded thoughtfully, and said, "Let me tell you a little story, Mr. Whitmore. An old friend of mine, about your age, loves to go duck hunting every fall. One morning, he got halfway to the lake and realized he'd forgotten his shotgun shells, but he went anyway. When a duck flew overhead, he pointed his empty shotgun, yelled, 'Bang, bang!' and down came a duck." Mr. Whitmore chuckled. "Somebody else must have been doing the shooting." The doctor leaned in with a knowing grin. "Exactly." A man was lying in a hospital bed, hooked up to oxygen, recovering from surgery. A young student nurse came in to give him a partial sponge bath. Through the mask, he mumbled, "Nurse, are my tests black?" The nurse froze, clearly flustered. "Sir, I'm only assigned to clean your upper body and feet," she said softly. But the man insisted again. "Please, can you check? Are my tests black?" Worried his anxiety might affect his recovery, she hesitated but decided to help. Gently, she pulled back the covers, lifted his gown, and carefully examined everything. After a thorough check, she said kindly, "Sir, everything looks perfectly normal. No signs of anything wrong." The man slowly lifted his oxygen mask, gave a weak grin, and said, "Thanks, but I was just asking, are my test results back?" Oops. A sailor and a priest are out playing golf one sunny afternoon. The sailor takes his shot. Whack! The ball slices off hard and lands in a sand trap. He mutters under his breath, "Ugh, missed it." The priest turns and gently scolds him. "My son, try to mind your words. The Lord hears everything." The sailor nods sheepishly. "Yes, Father. Sorry." On the next hole, the sailor swings again. Splash! The ball lands straight in a water hazard. This time he grumbles, "Dang it, missed again." The priest sighs. "Careful, my child. The Lord has patience, but even he has limits." One more shot. One more miss. The ball goes flying off into the trees, bounces off a branch, ricochets off a rock, and disappears into the woods. The sailor throws up his hands. "Oh, come on! I keep missing!" Suddenly, the clouds darken. Thunder rolls. A bolt of lightning strikes down out of nowhere and vaporizes the priest. Then a deep, booming voice echoes from the sky. "Oh, come on! I missed again!" A Florida Highway Patrol officer pulled over a guy on a Harley for speeding. He walked up to the biker and said, "Let's start with your name." "Fred," the man replied. "Fred what?" asked the officer. "Just Fred." The officer, in a good mood, figured he might let him off with a warning. But he decided to have a little fun and pushed. "Come on now. What's your last name?" Fred sighed. "Well, I used to have one, but I lost it." Now curious, the officer raised an eyebrow. "Lost it? How do you lose a last name?" Fred took a deep breath. "It's a long story, but here goes. I was born Fred Johnson. I studied hard, went to medical school, became a doctor, Fred Johnson, MD. After a few years, I got interested in dentistry, went back to school, and became Fred Johnson, MD, DDS. Then I made some bad choices, got involved with my dental assistant, and ended up with an infection, so I was Fred Johnson, MD, DDS, with a VD. The dental board didn't like that. They pulled my DDS, so I became Fred Johnson, MD, with a VD. Then the medical board found out, and there went my MD. Now I was just Fred Johnson, with a VD, and finally the VD took away my Johnson, so now I'm just Fred." The officer was crying. Not out of pity, but from laughing so hard he couldn't even write the ticket. An elderly rancher named Hank decided he wanted to head into the nearby town and catch a movie. As he approached the ticket counter, the attendant asked, "Sir, what's that on your shoulder?" Hank replied, "Oh, that's my pet rooster, Rusty. Wherever I go, Rusty tags along." "Sorry, sir," said the ticket attendant, "but animals aren't allowed in the theater." Hank thought for a moment, then went around the corner and tucked Rusty down inside his overalls. He returned to the counter, bought his ticket, and took a seat in the theater right next to two elderly sisters named Edna and Betty. As the movie began, Rusty started getting restless, so Hank unbuttoned his overalls just a bit to let the rooster peek out and watch. "Betty," whispered Edna. "What is it?" Betty asked. "I think the man beside me is a bit indecent." "Why do you say that?" asked Betty. "He's got his, well, you know, out," Edna murmured. Betty shrugged. "Ah, we're too old to be shocked. Seen one? Seen 'em all." "That's what I thought too," said Edna, "but this one's munching on my popcorn." My wife was standing in the kitchen, preparing our usual soft-boiled eggs and toast for breakfast, wearing only the t-shirt that she normally slept in. As I walked in, almost awake, she turned to me and said softly, "You've got to make love to me this very moment." My eyes lit up, and I thought, I am either still dreaming, or this is going to be my lucky day. Not wanting to lose the moment, I embraced her and then gave it my all, right there on the kitchen table. Afterwards, she said, "Thanks," and returned to the stove, her t-shirt still around her neck. Happy but a little puzzled, I asked, "What was that all about?" She explained, "The egg timer's broken. A man wanted to become a monk, so he went to the monastery and talked to the abbot, the head monk. The abbot said, 'You must take a vow of silence and can only say 2 words every 3 years. The man agreed. After the first 3 years, the abbot came to him and said, "What are your 2 words?" "Food cold," the man replied. The abbot made sure the meals are not cold. 3 more years went by, and the abbot came to him and said, "What are your 2 words?" "Robe dirty," the man exclaimed. The abbot ordered his robe be washed. 3 more years went by, and the abbot came to him and said, "What are your 2 words?" "Bed hard." The abbot made sure the mattress got restuffed. 3 more years went by, and the abbot came to him and said, "What are your 2 words?" "I quit," said the man. "Well," the abbot replied, "I'm not surprised. You've done nothing but complain since you got here." An old man who lived on a quiet country farm decided to take a stroll one evening to check on the pond in the back of his property. It had been a while since he'd walked down there, and he figured he'd pick some fruit on the way, so he grabbed a bucket. The pond wasn't just any pond. It was nicely fixed up years ago with a few picnic tables, some shade trees, and space to relax. A little slice of peace and quiet. As he approached, he heard laughter, high-pitched, joyful, and very unexpected. Curious, he got closer, only to realize a group of young women were skinny dipping in his pond. When they noticed him, they shrieked and swam to the far end, trying to stay hidden. One of them called out, "We're not getting out until you leave." The old man shrugged, raised his bucket, and said with a straight face, "That's fine. I just came down to feed the alligator." Needless to say, they were out of that pond faster than he could say, "Snap." 2 men are sitting next to each other in an Irish-style pub in New York City. They both order pints of Guinness. After a few, one of them turns to the other and says, "So where are you from then?" "I'm from Ireland." "Me too. I'll drink to that." They both finish their pints and order 2 more. "Where in Ireland are you from?" "Dublin." "Me too. I'll drink to that." They both finish their pints and order 2 more. "Where in Dublin are you from?" "The East Side." "The East Side." "Me too. What a coincidence. I'll drink to that." They both finish their pints and order 2 more. "Where on the East Side are you from?" "McDonough Street." Me too. This is incredible. I'll drink to that. As the bartender pours them another 2 pints, another customer at the bar says to him, "That's amazing. I can't believe they're from the same street in Dublin." "Oh, it's nothing amazing," says the bartender. "It's just the Ferguson brothers getting sloshed again." Student. 503 bricks are on a plane. 1 falls off. How many are left? Teacher. 502. Student. How do you put an elephant in a fridge? Teacher. No, you can't fit an elephant in a fridge. Student. Just open door. Put elephant in, close door. Student. How do you put a giraffe in the fridge? Teacher. Open door, put giraffe in, close door. Student. No. Open door, take elephant out, put giraffe in, close door. Student. The Lion King is having a B-Day party. All the animals are there, except one. Which one? Teacher. Let me guess, the lion? Student. No, the giraffe, because he's in a fridge. Teacher. Wow. Student. Sally has to get across a large river home to many alligators. They are very dangerous, but Sally swims across safely. How? Teacher. Sally stepped on the alligator's mouth. Student. The gators are at the party. Student. But Sally dies anyway. Why? Teacher. She drowned? Student. No, she got hit in the head by a flying brick. The military recently realized it had more generals than it needed, so they offered an early retirement deal. After sifting through all kinds of plans that nobody could agree on, they finally got creative. They announced that any general willing to retire on the spot would receive their full annual benefits, plus $10,000 for every inch measured in a straight line between any 2 points on their body. And the best part? The general could choose the 2 points. The first to step up was an Air Force general. He picked the top of his head to the soles of his feet, a solid 6 feet. He walked out with a check for $720,000. Next came an Army general, who stretched his arms straight overhead and asked to be measured from his fingertips to his toes. 8 feet. His check? A cool $960,000. Then came a seasoned old Marine general. When asked where he'd like to be measured, he calmly replied, "From the tip of my groin to my test." The pension officer blinked in surprise and gently suggested he might want to rethink that choice, especially after seeing the other 2 walk away with such hefty checks. But the Marine stood firm. So they called in the base medical officer for the official measurement. The doc asked the general to drop his pants, placed the tape at the tip, and started measuring downward, but kept going and going. Finally, the doc paused and asked, "Sir, where are your testicles?" With a straight face, the Marine replied, "Vietnam."